Let's learn how to work with GUI, GUI, Graphical User Interface, in Visual Studio. And the way we're going to do it is working with Windows Forms. So let's create a brand new project, File, New, Project. And this time, let's go ahead and click on Visual C#. And then you're going to choose Windows Forms App.NET Framework. And let's give it a name. Let's call it Forms Are Fun. Call it whatever you want. Click on OK, and then it's going to go ahead and create the new project for you, and lo and behold, we have a form, this graphical form. This is called the designer window, and the designer window is where you can actually lay out what you want a form or a window to look like. If I ran this right now, you would simply see that you have a Windows form created for you, and it's a form that already has functionality built into it. I could actually move that form around. I could resize it. There it is. I can resize that. I can maximize it. I can minimize it. I can click on the control box. I can choose any of those things. I can click on the X, and that is an actual Windows form that you've just made, and you didn't really do anything yet. So let's go ahead and play with it a little bit. One thing you want to do when you're working in the GUI environment, the design window, is you want to click on View, Toolbox. And then these are all the different tools or objects that you can work with on this Windows form. Now this Windows form is an object, and that object has attributes or properties associated for it. And if you don't see the properties window over here on the side, you can click on View, Properties window, F4, and then that'll bring that window up. So here's the form object, and it has attributes. Let's go take a look at those attributes. One thing we can do in this properties window is I can click on the A-Z, and that allows you to actually sort in alphabetical. This one allows you to sort by category, and the A through Z allows you to sort alphabetically. The category says it's going to group all the attributes that are common and put them together, and the alphabetized simply says we're going to start at A and go through Z. So click on alphabetized, scroll up, and then here is a property called name. That's the actual name of the object you're working with. Right now it's called Form 1. I could change that. I just double clicked on that area, and I can type in frmmain, enter. I have now renamed that form to be frmmain. So later on in the source code, if I want to work with it, I can say frmmain dot and access attributes associated with this object. And if you don't understand what I'm talking about when I say object and attributes, then please go back and watch some of the other videos I created in C#, talking about classes and properties and methods. So here's the form. Let's take a look at some of the attributes that are exciting for this object that you can work with. The first attribute that we're going to look at is going to be our back color. And there's a bunch of these that are great. And what I would do is I would just go Google those. Go Google C# form class, and then you'll see a better description of everything. Here's the back color. On that back color, I can click on the down arrow, and it says, do you want to look at system colors, web colors, or custom colors? Go ahead and choose custom colors, and let's choose maybe this color right here. And notice it changes the background for that form. Background image. This would allow you to go ahead and put a whole image and cover the background. Well, let's see how we do that. Click on the three dots. We call that an ellipsis. And it pulls up a list of resources you already have. You might not have any, so I'm going to click on a local resource, import, and then I'm going to go find maybe some JPEG files that I could work with. So you'll have to go look in your folders, but I know I do have one in the My Documents folder, and I have one called BYU, although it might be better to have Bacon Wrap Steve. In fact, let's just go and see what bacon wrapped cheese stuffed hot dogs look like. It's a JPEG file. I'll click OK, and that looks pretty good. And I'll click OK, and there's my images. Now, With that image, there's another attribute called background image layout. Right now it says tile. You could change it to be none, which simply puts the image on there somewhere. You can change it to be center. You already saw tile. You could change it to be stretch, and you can change it to be zoom. However you want to make your images look, that's what you could do on the background. That's background image layout. Another good one is the control box. Watch right up here, your max, your min, your close, and your menu item. That's called the control box. If I say false, disappears. True, comes back on. Cursor. By default, our cursor is the default, meaning that if I ran this, I would have the arrow that I could work with. Well, if I don't want the arrow for some reason, I could go to cursor and say I want my cursor to be the cross beam. Run that. Now my cursor becomes the cross beam until I hit the control box, and then it changes it back. Whether or not you'd want to do that, what it's telling you is you can control the cursor for the form. Like maybe sometime you'd want to make it an hourglass. I'm going to put it back to default. Another good one would be our icon. What icon do you want to use? Currently we're using this icon, and you can see it right there. I could click on the ellipsis, and if I had an icon, I could go find that icon and use it instead. So if I had an icon out there, maybe like this one, the Sonia Swarm hot dog, it then changes that icon of the form to be the hot dog icon. And so that way if I ran it, and if I ever minimized it, you see the hot dog. Even if I don't minimize, you see the hot dog showing up down here. Another good attribute that you could look at, opacity is pretty interesting. Right now it's at 100. Look what happens if I make it 50 and if I ran it. Whether or not you want to do this or not, I've now changed the opacity of that form. Maybe you need that someday, but neat. All you have to do is change the attribute. I'm going to put it back to 100. Show in taskbar. Currently it's true. I'm going to set it to false, run it one more time, and this time, if you notice, it does not show up down here. Before it was showing up. So that's another way. You just simply change the attribute and the system handles it for you. This is an important one, the text. You see where it says form right, that form 1? That's the text. I could say my hot dog app, and it changes the title of that form. That's called text. And then another good one is window state. Window state currently is normal. You could start it in minimized, or you could start it in maximized if you wanted to, but usually your windows are starting as normal. One other one I jumped over is start position. Currently it says Windows default location. I could say always start in the center of the screen. So when I ran it, now the app's going to be in the center of the screen, whatever you're working with. And there's different options you can choose for that. Center of the screen, or center of the parent, or default location. And that's just something that you'd have to decide. So working with the form object, you can see all you really have to do is change attributes. And as you change attributes, the form will actually change and how it works and how it looks. The other thing you can do is right here is a little lightning bolt. Those are called events. These are the events that a form can respond to. For instance, activated. Are you running that form, and is it the top form on your screen? Are you currently looking at it? Did you change the background color? Did you change the image color? Now these events are clicked off when something happens. If you click on the form, go do something. For instance, I could say, here's one called double click, deactivate. How about load? When the form is loaded into memory, I double clicked on it. Maybe I could say this dot title or this dot text is equal to I am now loaded, which maybe you could say welcome to the program and grab the end user name or something like that. Let's see what happens when it runs. Remember, it did say before a different title. Now it says I am now loaded, and that's because when you run the program, events are happening. Let me set a breakpoint and run it one more time. We're now getting ready to load the form into memory and display it. So what we do is we access the form object and the text attribute and dynamically change the values. So if we did have an end user that we had somewhere, we could actually, put a message that says welcome to the program. And those are events. Events are fired off when something happens. Notice that I'm looking at my C# code now. If you ever want to get back to the designer, just click on the design tab. Other events that you might look at. We already said you could click on it. Deactivate, meaning it's not in the front anymore. You're going to close the form. That's that one. You're going to close the form. You have closed the form. Maybe you would use this, form closing. Do you want to save all your data before you close? And we could do that in the form closing, so before the object's destroyed, we still have access to it. Did you press a key? Did the key go down? Did the key go up? Did you click the mouse? Did you mouse double click? Did you push the mouse button down? Did you let the mouse button come up? Are you doing a mouse hover? Are you drawing the form? Are you resizing the form? All of these methods are called as things happen to the form. So with an object, we have objects with attributes. Attributes describe the object, methods do work, and events respond. So all of these events are responding, these events are responding to actions that are happening with this object. And you now have complete control over the environment and what is going on. This is how you can work with the form object. I would strongly recommend you go Google a lot of the attributes and methods and learn them better. Once again, here's the designer, there's the form class. Over here in your solution, you can see that there's your form. Double click, there's the designer itself, which you're not going to really have to mess with that very much. And the resources you won't have to mess with. But the main thing is going back and forth between the designer and the source code. The designer is what the user sees, and the source code is the code behind that form. In fact, take a look at the source code for that form. It says the form object or the form class, where you're going to make objects, is visible to everybody. Partial. The partial keyword says you can have more than one file that's made up of this class, and they can all be combined together to make up the one class. That means if you had teamwork, you could have 4 people working on the same class, and as long as they were all partial, they could bring all those files together to make up one class. There's the actual statement that says we're working with the class. There's the name of the class, frmmain. Do you remember where it got its name? Because back here in the design, under the attribute, the properties, that little wrench, that's the properties window, I changed the name to be frmmain. That now changes the class. And then we said that frmmain class inherits from the form class. And then the first thing that happens is it calls its constructor. And that's a default constructor, isn't it? Because there's no parameters in it. But we wrote our own. Actually, the system did it for us. How do I know it's a constructor? Because it's the same name as the class. And what it does is it calls a method called initialize component. Now you might look in your class and you say, wait a minute, I don't see a method called initialize component anywhere. All I see is that form main, along with the event I made there, which as long as the event is empty or the method is empty, I can just delete that and there's no harm done. But this one, I actually want to go look inside of it. And I want to see what the code is. What does it do? Come back over to your Solution Explorer and you see where it says form1.designer.cs. Inside of that, we have the form main class. And inside of that, there's initialize component method. And the whole job of this initialize component method is to work with the form and to set all of the attributes that you just started to work with. Do you remember I said change the icon, change the name, change the text, make a load event handler, change the cursor, change the background image, the background color, the background layout. So as I go click, 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 it automatically changes all the data for me. Now currently I have a little error here, and that's because I just went and deleted this event. If I brought that back, you'd see that the error disappeared, because there's a right and wrong way to delete that code. And here's how you would do it. Well, before I leave that, I want you to see that that initialize component, this is automatically updated for you as you come to the designer and you click and change things. So now I'm back to the designer. Here's the form. Here's the event. Click on the lightning bolt. Do you see where it says here's the load? Here's the right way to get rid of the code. Sorry, let me get back there. The right way to get rid of the code is highlight the name, press delete, and save. Now if I come back to the code, that method is gone. Great way to go work with forms. Go use Google and Google the C# form class, and then you'll get a greater understanding of what all the properties are and what the events are and how they work.